Welcome to the Yoga Society podcast, where yoga is for everyone. I'm Martha Cottrell, and in each episode, we explore yoga, mindfulness, and movement for wherever you are in your journey. So let's get started. Today's guest is Morgan Cowie. She's the owner of Mosaic Yoga Studios with 2 locations in Toronto. I love chatting with Morgan because she's inspiring and so authentically real and not afraid to touch on uncomfortable topics. I hope you enjoy.
I had, we did intro classes like 2 weeks long, and someone asked me, can I just come to one class? And then decided if I liked it, then buy the intro class. And I was like, we're usually pretty flexible stuff. And I was like, no, because if you go to one class, you won't know
exactly
if you like it or not, because it could, another teacher, another style, another time of day. You kind of have to try it, through a lot of different lenses to know what you need.
Totally. Yeah.
And people often ask us too, like, what kind of yoga do you teach? And I was like, yoga. It's different. And every teacher, the way they teach is different. And we come from different backgrounds. When I was first learning how to teach, it was much more siloed. So you were like an Ashtanga teacher, or you were a Hatha teacher, whatever that means, or you were, this or this or this. And now I think it's a lot more fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll talk a little bit too about how other modalities can come in, because for me, the movement isn't precious. Like what the asana isn't precious. It's not the what that makes it yoga, it's the how. And so the way I teach, Pilates or bar or Qigong or something else, Qigong is probably more like yoga, but there's a way of teaching that makes it yoga. And so you can add really a lot of different movements, and you can even add movements from like strength training or Pilates or Qigong or whatever. And it will be yoga because of how you're interacting with it and like the way you're offering it to the student.
Exactly. Or I've also heard this described on that same wavelength as a practitioner, the way you practice. So like do your yoga if you're intentional and you're tuning in and listening to your body or whatever your activity you're doing. That's your yoga.
Yeah. And like you could do the same movement and it would not be yoga.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like we all have those times when we're like just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And it's not really, and at the end of it, you don't have that same sort of drop. Or even during, you don't have that same experience of just like uncovering something of like, just being in tune in a way that like I could do warrior 1 and warrior 2, warrior 3, and I would have that. Or you can do like a squat and have that, right? Like it's how you do it, I think, more than anything.
I think that's the thing that's hard to define. Like I've had people come out of a yoga class and say like, I'm not sure why, but I feel better.
Yeah.
Good. And it's this intangible thing.
Yeah.
And that is the yoga. It doesn't matter what the movement looks like, but it's that feeling of an inner revelation or, just feeling better than when you came into this.
And also it's like give yourself permission to not have to know why.
Yeah.
Because like actually the magic is not explainable by the intellect.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think as our culture, gets more back in tune with the idea of the intuitive sense having privilege. So like even during school, like we were trained to sort of like take information and barf it back out in a way that was very clear, so that it's like, you sort of designed to move into the workforce, designed for you do a critique of capitalism if we want, but like really. And now the experience, the how-ness is starting to be more and more important, and that's the magic. And you're never really going to be able to explain it in words. You can't. That's the whole point of it.
Exactly. It's not something intellectual. It's like the felt sense. And I guess we could go down a deep dive, but I feel like yoga is almost a gateway to that. For myself, it was too, where, you start, if you spend every day, you spend some time connecting with your body and really get into how you feel. It's able to help you in so many other ways.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And then like, of course, the asana practice is just one piece, right? Like pranayama, meditation, community. To me, these are all really huge yogic practices. And like some of the sort of reasons why this studio exists the way it does. But of course, like most of the time in a drop-in class, what we're really focused on is asana because it's quite needed. It's quite needed and it's quite accessible. It's harder to have someone come in off the street and be like, let's do like a pranayama practice. It's like, whoa, that's a little bit of overload. You don't know where someone's nervous system is coming from. You don't know whatever, but movement is usually a little bit more, I think accessible is a good word, but also like understandable.
Yes.
It's a good way to start because you're like, okay, I get exercise, so I can exercise, but like other stuff might be a little bit like feel just too far out there for the first taste,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I feel, in the yoga world, it's sort of a touchy subject that I'm a little bit scared to go into sometimes. Like, sometimes people who are very strict about traditional yoga and yoga traditions and so on might look at a more contemporary style of practice or studio where the beats are pumping, people are moving and say that's not yoga. I'm in the camp of as long as it's done respectfully of the traditions and roots of where yoga came from. If that's what brings somebody in to move their body and they're here there for the physical, and then it's a good thing. Like all yoga is good yoga, in my opinion. But I'm curious to hear what yours.
Yeah, that is definitely a tricky topic, right? Like, I mean, I think that I can only speak for my opinion and where I come from. So I am a white girl teaching yoga. I have always been very aware of that. I've been teaching long enough that at the beginning, the conversations about appropriation and what is and isn't yoga were very different. So when I first started really seriously practicing about 20 years ago, the way that sort of real yoga was defined was that you were tied to a lineage. So there was usually some kind of guru or like, you had like, you could trace your roots back to some teacher from India. Often they were still alive, not always, but and the kind of like big 5 or 6 teachers that brought yoga to the West and then created style, like really created a lineage, were really deified, right? So that was the way that we as a culture, especially in Toronto, really dealt with that. So you saw a lot of like iconography. You often saw like an image of your guru in the studio. There was like a way of validating the realness of it through that kind of like ancestry or whatever you would call it. But then that became problematic, and largely because some of those lineages turned out to be very problematic when sort of a critical lens came into it, when people started talking about some of the ways that humans who are in power will abuse power. And these people were in pretty serious power. Right. So not only were they experiencing a community that really looked up to them, they were a leader within, their particular craft. They were seen to be like the spiritual gatekeeper for people. So, I mean, power corrupts, right? So it was problematic. So a lot of that came up. So then there was a reckoning of like, why is this the way? Is this the only way? And is this like, there's obviously problems with this way. And then there was also a lot of non-white people, South Asian people, Black Lives Matter started to really start pushing against who should be at the front of the room and what. So there was a lot of questioning of like, and it was always happening. Honestly, it's always been happening. But then it became, I think more and more about, and listen to where I land is like to honor the tradition that you're working in. What's your practice? Right. So what I want to know is, are you doing this work all of the time? Is this a kind of like fad that you just sort of like dip into, or do you actually believe in the practice and do you do the work and even when it's really tough? And so it's not that you can't teach if you've just been, practicing for a year or two, whatever, but I want to know that you're digging in and looking at these tough questions. And that's part of how we do this work. So it's not, to me, and again, it's a tricky thing about what you're displaying or who you can say you're connected to, or what poses or what sequences you can master in your own body, or even the number of trainings that you have behind you. It's what are you doing right now? How do you practice right now? How do you understand this practice, and does it continue to evolve for you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's who I know is a practitioner and a teacher that I think is really coming with this idea of how-ness.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have music content, like you can have no music, you can have millions of props, you can have none, you can practice in a church basement, you can go outside in a park, but if you have a practice, it shows.
Mm-hmm.
And so that connection of your own individual commitment, that's what I want to know. And I think that's what also as a student, you often will feel. And you can do that in many different ways, in my opinion.
Right. I love that perspective. I've never heard it articulated that way, but I love that because what they're saying, it sounds something like, are you actually living your yoga? Are you actually here for it? It's not just another workout or another thing for you. It's like, do you feel it in your own practice? So you want to continue practicing on your own?
And I would also suggest too, it's are you pushing on discomfort? Because that's where we really do practice. So for example, the conversation about appropriation, do you just ignore it? If you're a white person at the front of the room, do you never have those conversations? Do you kind of list, instead of doing your own work, do you have tough conversations with people who might be like, what you just did felt appropriative, or this is something you might not understand when you're doing it, the impact on someone who was raised in India, and you're like, great, let's do this, because that's the deepest practice you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
In your own practice, you just go through the motions and kind of do the easy things for you that look performative, or on Instagram or whatever, or you do hard work that's boring, and you figure out where you're kind of imbalances are in the body, and you work on those things that are just grind. Because that's part of it too. Are you super attached to a particular outcome? Are you letting go of that? Do you work ethically with the people around you? Or if you make a mistake, can you own it?
Mm-hmm.
And these are all things that I want to see, and they're hard for us. I don't want to see that you can do a handstand on Instagram and then you're just a dick to everyone around you, or that you avoid any difficult conversations because you want to stay in that kind of love and light zone. I'm like, that's not practice. Practice is gritty. Right? Practice gets dark. And practice gets dark in community too. It's not just about hermiting yourself away. You got to be in the mix and be bumped up against and sharp edges, and so that's one of the reasons why the studio works the way it does. And, that you got to be honest with yourself and honest with the beings around you. If you really want me to believe that you have a practice.
Yeah, I love it put that way. And because I think even breaking it down to when you're in your yoga practice, I think all of us need to, you can go do a pose at a certain level, but you always have those days where you're like, my body just doesn't feel like going there today. And so I think they say that the strong yoga practice really is just listening to your body and not doing it for the ego, showing off to whatever other people you think are looking, the teacher or other people.
Or the habit, right? It's not just ego, right? It's habit too. It's the freshness will dissolve if you just stop listening. And so the freshness comes too from breaking a habit, doing something in a kind of messed up way, or in a way that you're unfamiliar with, so uncomfortable.
Yes.
I want to see everybody that I know constantly making themselves uncomfortable. That's a growth zone.
Yeah.
And that's where yoga happens, because we have to have tools to get through those places. When we're comfortable, we do no work.
Exactly.
And if you're always leaning towards comfort, we can in our culture, right? Do that 100%. Then it's really hard to find your practices. You don't need it.
Yeah.
You need it when you're in those times of like reaching, of instability. Like, I don't know what to do right now. Yeah.
Which like is so uncomfortable, which is like so easy to avoid. But when you get past that, eventually,
Yeah.
it's like the best feeling.
You blow your own mind, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I can do this. All the beliefs that I had about why I was sheltering myself in comfort, just they're going away. And so you're looking to dissolve those beliefs, like over time. And we have so many limiting beliefs that make us, unfortunately, more sheltered and want to shelter more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that about like there's so many ways you can interpret that in yoga.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Let's start back at the beginning because I want to hear more, and I think people want to hear more about you and your yoga journey.
I'm a Leo, so it's like takes me super 0.2 seconds to tell you about me.
Yeah, it's like how yoga came into your life?
Yeah, I think actually I looked at I was thinking about this question, and it's funny. I never thought I would be a yoga teacher at all. Like even through, and then eventually I just had no sense that I would ever run a studio. It has taken me a really long time to feel like I was the right person to be at the front of the room. I still have days. Yeah, right. I know, but like, it is something that is so sacred to me, so important. And it's really hard to feel like you are the one who should lead, And so that's a lot of my practice is just like, for me, it's like just surrendering some of that stuff and just being able to not think so much about myself as a center. I love being the center of attention, but I never it was hard for me to center myself as a yoga guide. So I started practicing in university. So it was a really long time ago. And I was in a church basement, and it was weird ass, flared out bell bottoms with patchwork shit all over them. And everybody's just bum, it's your grandma's there. And then it's your dog walks in, and it's super, super chill. Very community, very low, aesthetic, very genuine practice. And I think the first teacher I ever worked with, she ever practiced with, she was 7 months pregnant when I first started going to her classes. And so it was the practice was just very, not Instagrammable. The church basement. Yeah, it was really chill. And then I kind of, I moved away, and I lived in a country that didn't really have a lot of space to practice. I did a little bit on my own. But when I came back to Toronto, I was not in a great place in terms of body image, over exercising, over gym culture. I was really kind of caught up with some destructive habits. And my boss at the time, because I worked in an office, I worked in book publishing, said, my brother owns a yoga studio nearby your house. You should go. Which of course I did for ages, I was he's like, you like yoga? I'm like, sure, whatever, right? I was in my 20s. I was I have lots of things to do. But eventually I found my way to this space. And it was right down the street. It was Octopus Garden on Bloor. The place actually that is our Bloor studio near our aunt's studio now. And the first class I took, I was like, I'm obsessed. And the studio had a heartbeat. The teacher I had ended up being a mentor of mine for a very long time. I went back to her class again that night, and I pretty much never left. I was like, okay, I live here now, adopt me. I'm here. And I still I was just shocked when I was accepted into their teacher training program within that year. I couldn't believe it when they asked me to teach classes. I got pregnant very soon after, so then I was doing teaching, which was funny. And then I had my first son, and that weirdly made a path for me to leave my full-time, more kind of office job in the arts, but it was like kind of in technology and the arts, and it wasn't where my soul was. And I wanted to have mat leave for longer. They couldn't give that to me. And so I quit. And I started managing the studio, then became two separate studios, and one of the three owners stayed in that annex location, and two went to a college location, a large location. So they needed a manager. And so I started and there were more classes. So I started teaching, I started managing that studio. And then it just, all things sort of just broke. But every single step that I've ever had, I've been like, this is not who I am. It doesn't feel like me. Like, I don't deserve this. Opening this studio, it took like the universe pushing me from all directions, like it's every single way, both good and bad, for months before I listened. Like, to the point where, it felt like at the end, but right before I decided to do it, people were walking up to me on the street, like strangers, and being like, you should open a yoga studio. Like that, man. Like, it wasn't exactly like that, but it felt so much like someone would come up to me, that I hadn't seen for years, what are you doing now? And I'd tell them, they'd be like, you should open a studio. I'd be like, what the hell? And I was still resisting. So and then it was like not an easy road, right? Opening a studio is not easy. And then COVID hit. But it was, it was weird. It just feels like I really didn't think this was what should happen, but the universe was not going to let me change my mind or like not do it.
It sounds like one of those situations, which is amazing, where it's like the universe will give you little nudges, but if you don't listen, it just gets louder.
Kicks your butt. And it's like, Jesus, listen. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what it felt.
That's amazing. I mean, it's a great thing, and everyone can see that you have so much to bring to the community.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like, I feel really great about it. And, I have an amazing staff of people who I've known for many, many years, and who started working here right at the very beginning. And like, Mosaic is very much a mosaic of so many different, like, I want to say beams of light, but it's like so dorky, but it's true. Like, all the people who come here have like shaped it, and all the instructors on the schedule are just like amazing humans who do amazing things super differently. And so can resonate with like a lot of different people. I don't micromanage my team. I really want them to bring out their own signal, because if you there is no need, if you come to Mosaic, to come to my classes. Like, I actually love it that most people don't know that I own the studio. When they come to my class, they just come. And then later they're like, do you own this place? And I'm like, yeah, I do. But it's like, don't worry about it. Just come to the class, not because you want to have like a certain connection or whatever. And I'm here as a teacher. When I'm here like this, like, not that people are like guiding me being like, my past is messed up. I'm like, I know, but I'm like, well, let's do this right now.
Yeah. I love that. I think that, you have the confidence that you hire people who resonate with what you're offering here, and that everybody does have something different to share, and that people who come to classes, whether it's yoga or Pilates or whatever, they'll be drawn to different things, and different things on different days. And people on different days. So it's amazing to offer variety.
And for a while, they'll have like one person that they're like, this is the person I need to be with this person. And then they make a shift and they're like, oh my God, there's this whole other, area. And I'm like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Right. That's super to keep like just opening your heart and knowing that at different moments you need different things. That's very intuitive. That's very nice.
So I was going to say, how'd you come up with the name?
I already told you. Yeah. The whole idea is not only that there are different pieces of your practice and pieces of yourself that you want to be able to know and service and open to, and that requires different types of practice. There's also different signals and different ways that people bring that forward. So it's kind of like the mosaic exists on the individual level. So you're like piecing together the little again, beautiful patchworks that you need to make this like gem of an art piece that's you. And then by knowing those little parts in you, you're going to choose different practices. So we're always trying to offer different ways of practicing so that you can kind of like, notice that like yoga, asana, pranayama, meditations are beautiful things, but there might be something else that really feeds you for a while and you need all of that. And it might be something weird like you never thought about too, right? And then the other part is that the community then is allowed to be this mosaic. So there's no need for homogeneity, like you don't want everybody to be the same. You want people to show up in their weirdness and in their like church basement style, right? Like just hum on it. It's a studio for sure. So studio culture has a particular aesthetic and a particular way, but we're really encouraging, that you really, if you feel like you had to do something to come here, I think we're doing our job wrong. Right. Like one of the best reviews or compliments or whatever that we get as a studio is it's like really it's not pretentious. It's just like you just come as you are. Yeah. The work is not how you show up, but like what you do when you're here. Yes. People can like, honestly, like sometimes part of the practice is like sometimes someone's bugging, right? Like they're near your mat or they're like really loud or whatever. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's part of it, right? Like, and so you're in this kind of mind that lets you know that there's other beings that are just like you. And sometimes they don't appear just like you at the beginning. And the people who come here like have, that real sense of just like, whatever, like you can just be here. We're not an Instagram studio, like we really are about, like we almost never have this issue, but it just happened the other day. The singer was like filming themselves the whole time during class. And I was laughing because I was like 7.5 years. The other studios get this all the time, right? We've never had that because we're not really like, we don't look a way that you need to like, I don't know. It's just funny. Like, I just think we're in this kind of like, Sterling especially is in like a back, not alley, but like it's not like you wouldn't where there's a huge dumpster beside us, right? Like it's like you're coming into something that's a little bit hidden, a little bit like
it's a hidden gem.
It's a hidden gem, right? Like it's inside the town. It's not necessarily the facade.
I love it. It reminds me, I get the feeling because I grew up dancing. I get the feeling of the dance studios where like, you're in the middle of kind of an industrial park, but as soon as you walk in,
the magic's there. Yeah. I totally love that. That's exactly like it's like I don't know if you've ever gone to the Banya, like this spa, this like Russian spa, and like this weird like it's like this Etobicoke, so there's like this back alley of like a strip mall, and you walk in and you're like, okay, like down we're in this really cool thing. So it's kind of like secret.
Almost like a yoga studio speakeasy.
Yeah. It's not like a million password to get it. Everyone's fine. Everyone is so welcome. But you can also do
it. Is that when you can just like roll out of bed or whatever, come from whatever you're doing. I love that you even provide baths. Like,
we're trying, right? Like, it's like, you got, because I also have 2 kids. Like, I understand having like huge pressure on your time. Just get here. Yeah. Your job is get here. We'll take care of you. It's not going to be fancy. We're not going to like, it's not plus years level service, but you got to get your own props. You got to get your own stuff. Like, and like, just be here with us. We're ready for you. We're waiting, Yeah.
Really matters the good vibes, the community, and you're back creating this space for your practice. Yeah, I love that. And the mosaic piece really resonated with me. All the different ways that you could interpret it, and also how you're mentioning different styles of yoga and different classes really help you to meet different parts of yourself that you're either hiding and you're not even aware of. I think I feel like I had that in my first yin class.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You're like, whoa, totally different.
I'm previously more drawn to vinyasa and more movement, faster pace classes in the very first year in class was in my teacher training.
Oh God, you're like, what am I done?
Well, I always didn't think I'd like it because I was like, oh, it seems slow and boring and I don't need a deep stretch. Those are my misconceptions. And then the very first class I did, I was like, wow, this is exactly what
I know. Well, I'm like thinking about, I'm like always try to fit more restorative in because I'm like, I always will just be like, oh, it's fine. Like, I don't need to rest. And one of my friends who's like really a Taryn actually teaches me an amazing neutral teacher. And I said to her the other day, I'm like, oh my God, Taryn, I didn't need her. Like, whatever. I just need to rest more. She was like, looked at my eyes and she's like, yes, like you need to rest. And I was like, yeah, it's so hard.
It's hard.
You know, and that's the other one about making yourself uncomfortable, right? Like you're drawn to one thing and it becomes habituated and you tell yourself that's what you need and you tell yourself that's it. And then you like just open the door to this other thing and you're like, oh my God, like it's like Christmas.
Yeah.
You're so happy that you let yourself open this other present, you know?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So on movement and other kinds of movement, tell us about that.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I love moving. Like this is like you, I like to move. And so, you know, I didn't grow up with like a little more sports oriented because I grew up in a really small town where that was kind of what was offered. So I'm like obsessed with baseball still and I'm like love it so much. Yeah. And I do really like sports actually. Like I like all of them. I like the grace of it and the discipline and the teamness and I love sports. I think so that's a movement pattern, but movement it's very functional, right? Mm-hmm. So for my own practice and what I want to share here a lot of the time is like not so much the functional piece that, you know, is performance-based or whatever, but instead the like drop kind. Okay. So I also love dance. So I do like, you know, I do like, right now I'm really into like, there's a dance hall teacher that's like so fun that it's really free movement. You know, it's really cool. And you'll see that sometimes come into some of my classes and I play with that. Qigong is like a huge inspiration for me because I have one teacher, especially that's like brilliant at marrying the kind of like traditions of Chinese medicine with like sports medicine. And I just think it's so just mind blowing, right? Like it is like Qigong class is like, whoa, like you just feel like you took medicine after that. I don't teach that. I keep that more as it's a private practice for me because I like to have something that I don't ever have to think about teaching because everything else just becomes like, I'm like, well, how could I use this? How could I, whatever? But I want something that's just for me. Yeah. I will teach it sometimes on retreat, but not in a studio setting. Pilates, bar, these are like phenomenal training mechanisms that are designed for people who have performance orientation in their movement and need to get back to the place where they can like have all the pieces in place, same for somatics. And so like when I first started bringing Pilates and bar into this studio, it was a little bit weird. That wasn't as common for the yoga studios to have those things. And now a Pilates class, like there's like wait lists upon wait lists. And before like it was like crickets. Even 7 years ago. Yeah, even 7 years ago. Because yoga people didn't do Pilates. But and not bar for sure. But I was like, the movements that you need in, say, ballet are so similar to the demands of like a high level yoga practice, a lot of external rotation, a lot of whatever in the hand. And this is what preps you for it. Because yoga is an amazing modality, but it doesn't have those prep movements that something like Pilates and bar does because those are conditioning modalities. That's their whole reason to be. Yoga does something different. It's an experience modality. But you need those conditioning pieces to be able to stay healthy, I think, and to be able to go further in that exploration when you're doing the experience modality, you know, because to me, they're very different. And like, yeah, like basically I will do anything gym stuff, like you even saw today. And I'm really lucky that we got to just have a class together, but we did things that are more like gym based movements, but work them into an asana flow. So it feels just like that heart pumping kind of like, you know, one breath, one movement, but it's like you could do that in like, you know, your gym. Yeah. The squats and some of the lunges and step backs and things like that. So there's nothing that I will bring into a class if I think it's cool and if I think it works. But what I really work on doing is bringing them in for a reason. So it doesn't just, we're not like, for a while, there's this huge craze in yoga that everything had to be functional. Yoga's not a functional movement. I don't like go down and Trikonasana and try to shake when I like drop my hand. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not how I came in. It's a side bending movement. So silly. Like, you can look at some of the components of asana as being functional, but yoga is not functional. It's an experiential, again, practice. But you can like shift things into an asana practice that don't disrupt the beauty of it, but make it more effective. So I really like efficacy. I like creativity. I do not have a sense that, again, that kind of like what is sacred to me is the howness, not the wetness. So I will bring anything in, but it still has to feel cohesive. Still has to feel like there's a reason why we did this, and it wasn't just like to prep the wrist. Like, they're great, wrist press and things like that, but like, I don't want to come to a drills-based class. I want to come to a class where I have this kind of like, it's a dance, it's an opera, it's a whatever. Like, there's something really intuitive and like right brain, I think is the creative one, right brain about it, and so I will always teach from the feeling of like trying to create an atmosphere and a scene.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I totally felt that in your classes. That's what I said afterwards. I thought I could feel the functional movement. I love how you wove in different movements that were challenging in strength ways.
Yeah.
And just also challenged my brain to think differently. One in particular thought that I had was not even the difficult pose, how we were doing the lunge with like,
the gear to the side.
Yeah. And my body wants to move in the way that the habitual way.
Yeah.
And it always does, but I love the challenge of being in this. It's not a challenging pose, but just it's something I'm not used to doing. And I've started to notice even little subtleties in my body just from challenging it and being moving in a different way than I normally do.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. So I could feel that, how you weave your joy of movement.
Yeah. I'd say like it's so cool we have bodies. Like that's so cool, and I just really get so excited and like to watch other people, to experience other people, to be able to lead other people, be like, damn, like sometimes I'm stopping around class and I'm like, oh my God, like yoga's so cool, right? Like, are you guys so into this? Like, it's just so cool that we get to do that.
I know. And I think like what we talked about earlier, I think there's so much joy in discovering what your body, different things that your body can do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and to surprise yourself. Yeah. Right? Like, so, I mean, that's the thing too about sequence class is that, like, and it could be like a drop into like a physical shape or like a situation you're like, oh my God, like I never knew this was available to me. It's always been there. Right. And that is the practice of yoga, is that uncovering. And the moment of, I didn't know I could do this, or I didn't know this was here in me, or, and you start to do that more and more, you start to understand your spirit, your whatever is God or holy or sacred is you. And that like breaking apart of the beliefs you even have in like, how does my knee move? It's like that starting of questioning, okay, well, who am I? And as I practice, who am I? You have to be uncomfortable, right? You have to break away from those old stories that you have. But eventually you realize, I'm incredibly valuable. And I'm valuable because I am, not because of anything I do or anything I will do or have done. I remember, and, sort of hinted around some of this stuff. When I came to practice, I didn't feel valuable, and I still don't sometimes, like this is part of being human. You're going to always vacillate, right? Between these places where you're like I am deep within my sense of love and care for myself and others and being, and then like I'm a piece of shit, right? Like, and you're going to have those, and that's where you learn. One of the things I say to my students a lot, that you are actually good at base because you feel bad when you act in ways that are not in alignment with like, being decent. You feel bad about that. It's not because you're a sinful being and at the base of you are bad.
Yeah.
You wouldn't feel bad then.
Yeah.
You feel great. You'd be like, right on. Like, I just screwed some over. That's awesome, but you would feel guilt or shame and those uncomfortable emotions. So they actually are indicating to you that your goodness, not the opposite. But, when I've practiced for a long time now and worked through a lot of these kinds of narratives and challenges. And I remember the first day, maybe kind of when I say this story, but like the first day I ever was like, oh my God, this practice has like broken something in me that would have really held me back forever. It's broken these old stories. It's broken this old, like safety net that was actually really problematic. Was when I woke up one morning and I remember the day, like the sun was just streaming in through my window. And the first thought I had was, I love you, Morgan. I love you. And I was like, oh my God, like, and it was so pure and so, true. And it was like, I know, it's like, that's the moment when you're like, all this grind, because, it is a lot of grind. There's a lot of challenge sometimes. It's like the surrender, and oh my God, it was so cool. And it happens to me a lot now. Or, you start to get the ego, like really just being like, yeah, you're dumb, you're bad, you're tense or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so mean. Like, why are you being so mean? Like, I would say that to myself. Why are you being so mean right now? Like, that's so weird to talk like that, right?
Just giving yourself the space to even recognize that that's what's going on internally.
Yeah. And I want more and more, like, that's why the studio exists, right? So that more and more people can be like in community and know that like regular people are doing this work and regular people have this, your teachers are regular people who have regular challenges, and sometimes they yell at their kids and sometimes they like feel like fat and yoga clothes and like, everybody has that. Like, I don't, that's also like a huge bias here, whatever. Right? And but like, that's a criticism that I was taught, right? Like size is a huge one, still so prevalent.
That's an uncomfortable conversation.
Oh God, right? Yeah, and we are not doing that perfectly, right? Like, it's still so buried. Like fat phobia is still, I think, one of the biases that's still so, you're like allowed still to like, treat people poorly because of their body size. It's like an oppressive, strategy that has yet to really see a lot of dismantle.
That's terrible.
It's true though, and it's still a critique that we're like. I mean, there's patriarchy wrapped up in it. Yeah. There's like class. There's racism. Like, but it's all there. Yeah. So being fat and being old are still like huge problems, right?
Yeah. I think with yoga though, it is very, very helpful. I think a lot of people, myself included, have had the experience of being in a yoga class and that, like you were saying earlier, being so grateful for all the things your body can do, that it helps us as an individual move away from the negative talk about all the things you want your body to do and it can't. But yoga provides this space for reflection to be like, oh, I'm so grateful that I can move in this way or that I can feel this way. It feels so good to twist.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is like knowing that your body can be felt instead of viewed.
Yeah.
Right. So the viewing of the body creates a distancing from it. There's no pleasure in that, really.
Yeah.
The feeling of the body was what will give us that sense rush. And I think, I see honestly, like more and more that when some people come into practice, maybe not all, maybe it's always been like this, but it's definitely I see it, right? I'm like, are you doing this practice to feel it or to show it? Because showing a practice is never going to be yoga.
Yeah.
Right? It can't be because you're not feeling it. There's no transformation. There's no depth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we all do it once in a while.
Of course.
The thing is to catch yourself.
But it's also beautiful. I don't have any problem. Look, I'm, a show off too. And I'm like, to be able to be like, oh my gosh, I can do this and I want to show it off. That's really also, I think something that can be, I'm not judging that. Like, I think that movement is beautiful. Our bodies are beautiful, and so like being allowed to experience that part of it and that kind of like uplifting piece of it. Yes. Like that's going to bring you joy, of course, but just make sure that's not the only part of your practice, right? Because as you show it and you should be vibrating that energy from the inside. Right? It feels so good. And you're like, look, like this is so, look, like it's like a little kid, like, look, I'm jumping. And you're like, look, I could do a handstand. Look, I'm doing this back again. Like, look at me. I want to shine, right? Like I want to shine into the world. What I'm feeling is.
I think it's not even just look at me saying that to the other people. It's like showing yourself.
Yeah.
Look at what we can do.
Yeah, look. Like, awesome. Yeah, totally. Celebrations are key, right? Celebrations keep us going.
Yeah. I felt that in your class, and this is my favorite vibe in a class where the movement is accessible and you don't make anyone, the way that you gradually build and ease into movements. If you want to stay exactly as you are in whatever shape you're in, you don't feel like you need to go further to be doing the practice. But if you want to go further, you also don't. I didn't have the feeling of, sometimes you can be in a class and people think you're showing off. And you're like, no, I actually just feel good moving this way.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, I know. I think that's what I try to do. If it would be fun for you to go to this next thing, let's do it. Because we've done the work too, right? Like, and it's also like you want payoff, right? Like, and I think that too, accessible practice doesn't have to mean that we never do fancy things. Like, today we did like a pretty fun arm balance and it's like, let's just see. Yeah. Like, would it be fun, to do it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Especially because, for my practice, at least, I've found that moment and I've seen it happen in other people where you don't think you can do it. Like, I know the first time I got crow pose even, I was like, couldn't get it for so long, but I kept trying it, kept seeing. And then one day it clicks.
It clicks. Yeah. And you're like, arm balances are the best for that. You're like, whoa. Yeah, I totally do this.
You get in your head about how like, I can't do it, but I'll try.
Why?
And then one day you do it and you surprise yourself and you're like, where did that come from? Now I want to do it.
Yeah, now I want to do more, right? And so that also is important, right? Like those we are humans, right? So we have to feed that kind of motivation too. And but it can be something as simple as like, rest for me is my big project. Rest. And so I've been doing like a nidra every day at practice, and I have a couple teachers that I really love working with, so I'm doing reporting. And I was like, oh my God, I almost fell asleep in a yoga nidra. And I never do that, right? Because I'm very like, what's next? And I'm like, that's delicious. Like, it felt so delightful. And I was like, oh my God. And then I had the best sleep ever. And I was like, okay, so I want more of that. And I need that hunger too, right? So it doesn't always have to be this big, like, energetic, like high octane achievement. It could be a drop. And I'm like, or you're meditating and you're like, whoa, like I just had a little glimpse of something and I want more, but that happens because you're in crow, trying to make it happen 17 times. You're in your meditation, you're going through your grocery list all the time. Then all of a sudden, and there's spontaneous moments, but you have to celebrate them. Like, so you want to keep going back. Yeah.
No, I think in meditation, it's actually, I find it's even harder sometimes because you're sitting there and you're like, this is doing nothing.
I'm doing it wrong. Like, everybody else can do this better than me. Yeah. And, some of my favorite teachers will say things like, you can't do this wrong. Yeah. Right? Go do it wrong. Like, whatever. You're just spinning out. You're like, like, it's fine. Yeah. You're listening to garbage trucks down the street. Like, that, you can't do it wrong. You're here. You're trying. And then you have those glimpses of grace, right? Exactly. But you have to get in there and have it be like dirty, grindy, and boring, and like nothingness until it's something.
It's something. You get a little click, and then you want more.
Good.
So that's amazing. Okay. I know we're running out of time, so we can talk forever. But can you tell us? I always ask this question to everybody because I find it's very hard to define.
Okay, great.
For you, what is yoga?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say that the best working definition that I have right now, because I think it evolves, it should, right? It should, is that yoga is whatever helps you remember who you are. And I mean that who you are in that you are good and worthy and sacred. And so is all being. And you forget that because you're supposed to. That's what being a human is. You'll always have and that's actually a propulsion into remembering, right? So, you see the cycles of spinning out and not remembering. And then they can, like we talked about with kind of feeling bad when you do something crappy to someone, they bring you back because you start to realize if you're sensitive enough, if you're doing work enough, that doesn't feel true, really.
Yeah.
And so even though it's very magnetic and convincing, it doesn't feel true. And so I think anything you do that, again, breaks apart those beliefs that are limiting, that puts you in those discomfort moments where you have to push up against something hard and you have motivation to do that work, anything that helps you to remember who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that quote. Yoga is the journey to the self through the self.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you're always, but it's not that, right? And this is the thing that sometimes I think, and this has gotten more and more nuanced for me as I practice more, we think about those darknesses or the through the self, the thickness, the like hardness, the brambles as being problematic. So we try to fight with them. But actually, they're the thing that takes us to all those discomforts, all those spinnings. They're the thing that helps us see underneath that. But it sucks because they're crappy. Like we want the journey to be really, really easy and sweet, but it has to be gnarly.
Yeah.
It has to be like that.
Of course.
But it's too bad because, like we don't want it to look like that, but that's the gift of being a human, not the challenge. Like we weren't doomed to this. We were granted this, that like you have to have, like my dog. I love my dog so much. My dog is just like a dog. He is so happy all the time.
Yeah.
He's not like in his head like, oh God, like I'm going to die and the people I love are going to die and I'm not good enough and whatever. He's just a dog. He's like, can you pet me? Awesome. You're petting me. That's great. And I'm like, my dog will never have that experience of, the drop into like being.
Yeah.
But he's maybe there all the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's also just like happy,
Yeah.
And you have to almost like the suffering is essential. The suffering is not, it's like that, really like overly quoted, but like the crack is where the light gets in.
Yeah.
It's not a flaw that the crack is there. It has to be there. Yeah, it has to, or it won't happen, right?
I think when you go through, and that's what they say, to be human, you're going to meet challenges in life. It's unavoidable, right? I think it's hard to hear it when you're in the thick of a really difficult time, but when you're on the other side, you're able to get to that moment where you're grateful for all the suffering.
Yeah.
Because it's changed you, you've changed, or you've become more of who you are because of it. Yeah. Without that challenge, you wouldn't have met that part of you. Yeah. That's how I see it.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
So I think yoga is such a great tool. There's many ways to get there, but yoga is an amazing tool to help us.
Yeah.
Give us something tangible to the intangible thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, community is like that too. Yeah. And practicing with community is like the way.
Yeah.
All the way.
I agree. I heard this, someone described it one time as yoga is a very personal journey, but it's best practiced in community. Like we're all on our own paths.
Yeah. Well, I think that, the individual is, so incredibly unique in how these challenges will be handled and so not. Right. Like, I in the teacher training I teach, I often reference this unbelievable TED talk by Ethan Hawke, where he talks about the experience of art and how, who cares poetry, blah, you don't care about it, whatever. And then one day, your partner leaves you, your child dies, you fall in love, you have those peak moments. And then the only thing that keeps you together is art, is it the idea that someone else has felt like this.
Mm-hmm.
They can show you, you can feel yourself through it. And I feel the same way about practice.
Yeah.
Is that it's so individual, except it's 100% shared. And so we can see ourselves, these unbelievably singular experience reflected back to us by other beings. That's how we know. That's how we know what we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And feel helped.
It's true.
Yeah. It's a great technique. I really like.
I'm going to have to look at that. Do you have the daily practice or routine that you do?
I'm like really chaotic. Anyone who knows me knows this. But I have actually really, 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 really committed. So for about 7 months now, I do a pranayama practice every day. I've missed only like 3 or 4 days in the last 6 months. And usually it's first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I will do, if I have time, then I'll sit right after. So that is it. Like the breath practice is like a non-negotiable. And then I'll meditate if I have time. Depends on what my day looks like because they're pretty wild.
Yeah.
And then I will try to sneak in a sit somewhere else. But I'm also doing a nidra every night.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so that's cool. That's really cool. And then my movement practice really depends. Like, so it will be like, I have many, many different ways that I practice. So, but I will practice usually movement for about an hour a day, but it really depends. I still love being led.
Yeah.
So I do have a lot of teachers that I follow online, but I love this sort of sneak into practice whenever. And so that doesn't have the same structure to it because it just depends when I can put it in.
Yeah.
But I do really, and then there's like a few key things that like, if I'm prepping a class or whatever, then I'm going to have to get on my mat, put on my music and just do my thing and try to figure out what I'm doing. And then like the other pieces that come up for me quite frequently are journaling practices. I do find that is a difficult thing for me to do, but super, super, super important.
Yeah.
And then, just like looking at folks and trying to show up for them. And that is a huge part of my practice. And realizing when I've fallen down and taking that on as reflection and trying to figure out where and what is going on with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying also, this is a funny and hard one for me, is to bring food in as part of my practice.
Okay.
Because I really do just kind of like eat on the go all of the time. Like my European friends are like, oh my God, you're such a pig. And I'm like, I know, because I'm just like shoving food at myself in the seconds that I have between this and this and this. But I'm trying to resense my like food as nourishment and care. But I still am
like sit down, have.
Maybe it's for me, like that would be hard all the time, but like maybe it's just like knowing like the gratitude practice of like, I made myself this smoothie. It's a beautiful thing. I'm not just gonna like mindlessly consume it. I'm gonna think about it as I'm like putting it together, put that little intention into it, and then when I drink it or when I eat food or whatever, but I'm like I'm like girl dinner. I would like, I would just never like, I don't prefer cooking. I'm not really into it. I just like take food as very like functional. I'm like, oh no, I'm starving. I haven't eaten all day. And so I really do need to like, that's an edge practice for me. I think. Yeah.
I think that's good. It's good to have the routine practices that you've worked into the routine, and then to dabble with new habits.
So you're like, bit of a like not paid attention to spot usually.
What's your favorite smoothie?
Okay, so my partner's gonna, like, he says it's a smoothie of sadness, but I think it's delicious. So it's just water as a base, because I just find like, like milk and stuff like that can just be too, like, I'm carrying it around. I don't know when I'm gonna drink it. I usually put kale into it, then either berries or mango, depending what I'm in the mood for. And then if I remember, I'm going to put like some kind of nut butter in so that it has a little bit more like bulk to it. And then I'm like a chia or a flax or like a hemp scoop. And then I do put collagen in because I do actually find that it makes my bones and hair feel better.
Yeah.
I use marine collagen. It's like more ethical.
Yeah.
And then like if I feel a little bit decadent, maybe I'm throwing like some chocolate, cocoa or something into it. But and then I also always put ginger root and turmeric root in.
Oh, that's nice.
It is really good, especially the mango version. It's great.
What's sad about that?
I know. I'm like, don't eat. I'm sorry that I like vegetables, you know, like, but I think it's because it's like banana. I usually put a banana in too.
Is it like green brown?
It's green brown. It kind of looks sad. Like, the orange mango one is not as bad as the berry one. It's a bit of a brown tint.
But if you know, it tastes good.
It tastes good. Yeah. It's just not as like good looking.
Yeah.
So
I know, and I get where he's coming from, but I also I know that it would taste good.
Everything about it is delicious. It's just like not like nice looking.
Aesthetic.
Yeah, aesthetic.
Yeah. But I feel like that's the real.
You can serve it in a restaurant for
sure.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that sounds good. Okay, my last question for you was just to go back to the beginning, because you mentioned that your very first yoga class was in a church basement. What drew you to it? What gave you the idea to like, I'm going to try yoga?
I mean, I studied philosophy in undergrad, and I think that now I would be able to know that what was really lacking in my education in academia was that embodiment. And I really always had a sense of how missing that was. Like it was like trying to lift something with only one arm. And I was often one of the only, not that I think gender has anything to do with it exactly, but I was often the only woman in my class. It was a very competitive environment, very rational, and like the kind of like verbal and intellectualization was very privileged. And so I think that as I started practicing, and the reason why I wanted to is because I really loved the idea of truth and knowledge seeking through a body-based practice. That's how I understood it at the time. And I couldn't have said that at the time. Like I definitely did not have that insight. But the more that I practice now, the more I realize how much of my truth comes through the body. And that was always true. And I think it's true for everyone. Yeah. But we want to cognitively explain things and rationalize them and be able to argue them. And actually, there's some things you just can't argue. You know them, and many things, right? And or like the ways that we are skilled are not actually intellectual. Yeah. You know, some of like the best, most talented people in the world would not sit down to like a talking head sort of analysis of like current events. They never would, they never could. Yeah. But that doesn't mean their intelligence should be discounted. And so I think that the intelligence and the wisdom that was waiting in those in that church space with the randomness, and then we were using like ties, neckties as like straps. I mean, that was what was missing from my truth seeking, and so that's why. And then that's why I kept coming back. It kept pulling me back, and now I'm like, okay, I surrender. Like I know, but it's hard. It's hard because it's so deep and it's so uncelebrated in our culture, right? It's like not allowed. Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like I have to, like with many of my circles, just be like, I don't care. I don't have to prove this. I'm not going to prove this. It's true. Yeah. And so knowing that it's true is enough for me now. Yeah. And this internal validation far outweighs the need for any kind of external validation. I love that. Yeah. I feel like my journey, the way I relate to that is completely inverted. Interesting. I started with the yoga, and I hate to admit this, but when I was in undergrad, I was in the science
fields. And I was always like, yeah, philosophy, whatever. I didn't know much about it.
Yeah. It's easy to not know.
I was very much like science, rooted in facts.
Yeah. Well, you'd like some philosophies actually very much like
but it's only been, and I've been doing yoga also for a very long time, but it's only been more recently that I've been really drawn to philosophy and getting into it. And so it's been and everything starts to click and make sense, because it's like what you said, like this is stuff I knew, but I didn't know how to articulate it, or even to myself.
Yeah. And I think that all of these things are such gifts, right? Like there's so many ways, just like there's so many paths of practice.
Yeah.
Right. And I teach people, I'm like, you could do bhakti yoga, where just like, devotional practice. You could do mantra work. You can do karma practice. Like it's all yoga.
Yeah.
Whatever helps you remember. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. It's all yoga. I mean, life is yoga. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you. It was great.
I'm going to post the studio and post so that everybody can find you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Yoga Society podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe and share it with someone who could use a little more mindfulness in their day. See you next time.